The day before the wedding was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. The dress was hanging in the closet, the bouquet was carefully arranged, and the cake, still a mystery to me, was said to be perfect. Everyone was excited, running around, putting the final touches on everything, and I was supposed to feel the same way. But instead, I felt a strange weight in my chest, something heavy that I couldn't shake off. I had always dreamed of this day, of marrying the man I loved, of having everything fall into place like the fairy tale endings you read about. The excitement I had imagined as a little girl had always been so clear. But now, as I sat in front of the vanity mirror, wearing the soft, delicate robe my mother had given me, I couldn't quite feel it. I caught my reflection, and for a moment, I didn't recognize myself. The girl staring back at me looked like she had everything together, perfect hair, makeup, and a smile on her face, but inside, I was unsure. A voice inside me whispered, "What if this isn't right?" I tried to shake it off. "It's just nerves," I told myself. "It's normal to have doubts before such a big decision." But the more I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt. Tom was everything I had ever imagined in a partner. He was kind, caring, and everyone around us adored him. Our families loved the idea of us being together, and we had been together for 5 years now. We had spent countless hours talking about our future, our plans, everything. But recently, I had started to question whether that future was the one I truly wanted. The truth was, Tom wasn't perfect. He had his flaws, of course, just like anyone. But there were little things that had been bothering me recently. I had noticed that we didn't laugh together as much anymore. Conversations felt strained. He was often distracted, preoccupied with his work, and it seemed like he wasn't as present as he used to be. The deep, unshakable connection I once thought we had felt like it was slowly slipping away. I wondered if that was what marriage was about, not a constant thrill, but a steady companionship. But the thought of stepping into that kind of life, day after day, made me uneasy. Was that the kind of life I wanted? Was I settling? As I sat there in front of the mirror, I couldn't ignore the voice in my head any longer. I had spent the last few weeks denying it, pretending like everything was fine. But now, with the wedding just hours away, I couldn't deny the growing sense of discomfort. The wedding that was supposed to be a celebration felt more like a weight pressing down on my chest. I wasn't sure anymore if it was what I really wanted. I heard footsteps outside the room and immediately knew it was my mother. She knocked gently before entering, and when she saw me, she smiled warmly. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," she said, adjusting the hem of my robe as she came closer. I forced a smile in return, but I could feel her eyes searching mine. She could probably sense that something was wrong, even if I hadn't said anything. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice soft, full of the kind of warmth only a mother could offer. I hesitated before replying. "Yeah, just a little nervous. I think that's all. It's a big day." She nodded, clearly understanding, and didn't press further. "It's normal to feel like that, honey. But just remember, this is the man you chose. The man you love. Everything will fall into place." Her words were comforting, and I tried to convince myself that everything was fine. She was right, wasn't she? Tom was the man I loved. But as the words left my mouth, I couldn't shake the feeling that something inside me was still uncertain. The rest of the day was a whirlwind of activity, final touches on the wedding venue, last-minute errands, and making sure everything was in place. I went through the motions like a puppet on strings, smiling when I was supposed to, nodding along as everyone congratulated me and asked if I was excited. But inside, I was filled with doubt. When I finally sat down to have a quiet moment by myself, I closed my eyes and thought about Tom. I thought about our first date, the way he had looked at me with such affection. I thought about the way he held my hand during difficult times, the way he made me laugh, the way we shared the same dreams for the future. But I also thought about the way things had changed between us, the way I felt distant from him now. I wondered if I was just afraid of the commitment, afraid of the unknown. But then, there was another part of me, deep down, wondering if this was the moment to listen to the voice inside my head and truly ask myself, is this really what I want? As the evening stretched on and the sun began to set, I knew I had to make a decision. The wedding tomorrow would be a turning point, either a celebration of the future I had planned, or the beginning of a realization that I was about to make a mistake. I was torn. The answer wasn't as clear as I thought it would be. And now, more than ever, I had to find the courage to listen to my heart, no matter what it said. The night before the wedding was far more still than I expected. The house was quiet now, everyone having left to get some rest before tomorrow. I stood by the window, staring out at the moonlit sky, my mind racing with thoughts I didn't know how to quiet. The perfect wedding that had been planned for months now seemed like an impenetrable wall, one I wasn't sure I was ready to scale. I thought about all the people who would be there tomorrow, friends, family, colleagues, all looking at me with the same expectation in their eyes. Everyone was so eager to see me walk down the aisle and marry Tom. They saw it as the culmination of something beautiful, something destined. They didn't know about the doubts creeping inside me, the fear that this might not be the fairy tale they had all imagined. I hadn't had the courage to tell anyone how I felt. I hadn't told my mother about the little moments that felt off, or the way I could no longer ignore the growing distance between me and Tom. To everyone else, this was a celebration, but to me, it felt like a performance. A play I had unknowingly signed up for, and now I was too far into the script to back out. I walked into the bedroom and glanced at the dress hanging from the closet door. It was beautiful, ivory silk, delicate lace, just the right amount of sparkle. It was everything I had dreamed of. Tomorrow, I would be in it, walking toward Tom at the altar, surrounded by the people I loved. But the more I looked at it, the more I felt that it wasn't my future I was walking toward, it was someone else's vision of what my life should look like. It wasn't that I didn't love Tom. I did. I loved him in a way that made sense when I was younger, when everything felt simple and easy. But now, as an adult, with all the complexities of life and relationships, I started to realize that love alone might not be enough to make a marriage work. Tom was everything I had once thought I wanted, but somewhere along the way, we stopped growing together. Instead of deepening our bond, I felt like I was merely going through the motions. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I closed my eyes and tried to focus on the feelings I had for him. I remembered the way he looked when he first asked me to be his girlfriend, how his eyes sparkled with hope and excitement. I remembered the way he held me through tough times, offering the kind of comfort only he could give. We had built so much together, but now, I couldn't ignore the emptiness I sometimes felt when we were together. I had asked myself 100 times, am I just afraid of commitment? The thought circled back to me every time I tried to analyze how I felt. But I wasn't afraid of commitment, I was afraid of settling. Of marrying someone because I had been with them for so long, because it felt like what I was supposed to do, rather than because I truly believed it was the best decision for both of us. I was ashamed of the doubt, guilty for even considering backing out. I should be excited, after all, wasn't this what I had been dreaming of? The fairy tale ending, the start of a new chapter with the man I had spent so many years with. But I wasn't excited. I was terrified. Suddenly, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a message from Tom. Can't wait to see you tomorrow, my love. You're going to look so beautiful. I'm the luckiest man in the world. My heart fluttered at the words, but it wasn't the flutter of joy that had always come with his sweet messages. This time, it was something else, a knot of discomfort that twisted in my chest. The guilt I felt only intensified. I didn't want to hurt him, but could I truly go through with this wedding, knowing deep down that I wasn't sure if it was the right choice? The hours slipped by. I spent them alone, lost in thought, replaying every moment of our relationship, wondering when things had changed. When had I stopped feeling the way I used to? When had Tom stopped feeling like the one? It was as if the reality of this commitment, of what it meant to tie my life to someone else's forever, had suddenly hit me all at once, like a wave crashing against the shore. I found myself thinking about all the things I still wanted to do with my life, all the places I wanted to go, the experiences I had yet to have. Would I be able to have those things if I settled into the predictable, comfortable life I had been preparing for with Tom? I glanced at the clock. It was getting late, and tomorrow would come whether I was ready or not. The weight of the dress hanging in the closet felt symbolic of everything I was about to carry: expectations, promises, a future that wasn't mine, but was made for me. I stood up from the bed, walked to the window, and looked out at the city below. It was quiet now, the soft hum of the night giving me a moment of stillness. A moment to breathe. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to think about my own desires, about what I wanted for my future, not based on anyone else's expectations, but on what felt true to me. I didn't have the answers, but I knew that something wasn't right. I could feel it in my bones. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized, maybe I wasn't ready. Maybe I wasn't ready to make that choice just yet. The morning of the wedding arrived, and the house buzzed with activity. I could hear the voices of my bridesmaids as they moved about the house, preparing for the big day. My mother had arrived early, and I could hear her chatting excitedly with the makeup artist in the other room. I should have felt excited, too, but there was a heavy weight on my chest, a pressure that only seemed to intensify with each passing hour. I stared at myself in the bathroom mirror, my reflection a mix of excitement and fear. The dress I had picked out months ago fit perfectly, the lace shimmering softly under the light. I could see the excitement in the eyes of those around me, and I wondered how they would react if I suddenly called it off. The thought made my stomach turn. The house was filled with laughter and chatter as the final preparations were made, but it felt distant, like I was observing it all from outside my own body. I wanted to be part of the excitement, to feel the thrill of the day ahead. But instead, I felt trapped in a moment I wasn't sure I wanted. I thought about Tom. He was already at the venue, preparing for the ceremony. I imagined him pacing nervously, checking his watch, waiting for me to walk down the aisle. The image made my heart ache. He deserved a woman who was completely sure about her choice, a woman who was ready to marry him without a single doubt in her mind. And yet, here I was, on the verge of making the biggest decision of my life, and I wasn't sure I was ready. "Are you ready, sweetheart?" my mother called from the other side of the door, her voice full of excitement. I nodded, forcing a smile onto my face as I opened the door to face her. She looked radiant in her dress, her excitement contagious. But her eyes, filled with pride, only deepened the anxiety I was feeling. She didn't know what I was going through. She had always believed that I was ready for this, that Tom and I were meant to be. But I wasn't so sure anymore. "Just a few more minutes," I said, trying to sound convincing. "I'm just trying to gather myself." She nodded with a smile. "You look stunning. Tom's going to be so happy to see you. He's waited for this day for so long." The words stung, and I nodded, forcing my emotions back down. He deserves this, I thought. He deserves someone who is sure of him. But the voice inside me wouldn't be silenced. The doubt gnawed at me with every passing minute. Was I doing this for him? For the life we had built together? Or was I doing it because it was expected of me? Because I didn't want to disappoint the people who had spent so much time and energy planning this day? And, most importantly, was I marrying Tom because I loved him enough to spend the rest of my life with him, or because I was afraid of what it would mean if I didn't? I glanced down at the wedding ring on my finger. It had been slipped on during one of our many talks about our future, and I had accepted it without hesitation. But now, with the weight of the day pressing down on me, I felt as though I had never really had a choice. The ring didn't symbolize the freedom I had once imagined for my future. It symbolized a life I wasn't sure I was ready to live. "Sarah, everything's ready," my maid of honor, Jessica, called from the hallway. She poked her head into the room, her face lighting up when she saw me. "You look gorgeous. Are you ready?" I forced a smile, nodding quickly. "Yeah, I'm ready. Let's get this over with." As I made my way to the car, I felt a knot in my stomach. The drive to the venue felt like an eternity. The sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a golden glow on everything around me. The world outside looked perfect, untouched by my inner turmoil. I couldn't help but wonder if I was about to make the biggest mistake of my life. Tom had always been my rock. He was dependable, loving, and always knew what to say to make me feel better. But in recent months, I had begun to realize that dependability wasn't the same as passion. Loving someone didn't always mean you were meant to be with them forever. I wondered if I was clinging to him simply because I was afraid to face the unknown, because I feared being alone more than I feared living a life I didn't fully want. When we arrived at the venue, everything was exactly as it should be. The aisle was lined with white roses, the altar gleaming under the soft lighting. The guests were already seated, and the sound of soft music filled the air. But I felt detached, like I was watching someone else's wedding, not my own. As I stood behind the curtain, waiting for the signal to walk down the aisle, I glanced at my bridesmaids, their faces full of excitement. They were whispering to each other, sharing smiles, adjusting their dresses. They had no idea what I was feeling, how could they? This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but I felt an overwhelming sense of dread instead of joy. "Are you okay?" Jessica whispered, noticing the tension in my face. I nodded quickly, trying to cover it up. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just a little nervous." "You've got this," she said with a reassuring smile. "You and Tom are perfect for each other." I nodded, but the words didn't bring me the comfort they once would have. As the music began to play, signaling that it was time for me to walk down the aisle, I took one last look at myself in the mirror. The girl I saw in the reflection looked poised, beautiful even. But inside, I felt like a different person. Someone unsure, someone lost. The moment had arrived, and there was no turning back. The music played softly, filling the silence that surrounded me as I took my first step into the grand hall. The air seemed thick with expectation, and every footfall felt like a hammer striking the floor beneath me. I could hear the rustling of my wedding dress, the sound of the fabric swishing around my legs, but it all felt distant, as if I were floating above the scene rather than fully part of it. My heart was pounding in my chest, faster and faster with each step, each movement toward the altar where Tom was waiting. His face was turned toward me, his expression a mixture of hope and love. I could feel his eyes on me, and even from a distance, I could tell that he was smiling at me, waiting for me to join him. For a moment, everything seemed surreal. The flowers, the decorations, the guests who had traveled to witness this union, everything appeared to blur around me, until it was just Tom and me, standing there, about to take that final step toward forever. But what was forever? Was it a commitment made because it felt safe and familiar, or because I truly wanted it? As I walked toward him, my mind was a whirlwind. My feet moved on autopilot, guided by the routine of the day, but my thoughts were elsewhere. I was thinking about the last few months, the way Tom and I had grown distant from each other. I thought about the conversations we'd had about our future, and how they had somehow felt forced. I had ignored the signs because I thought I was just nervous, but now, standing in front of him, the reality of what was about to happen hit me all at once. Tom was a good man, and he deserved someone who was sure about their future together. He deserved someone who was ready to be by his side, to share their life with him. And yet, here I was, walking down this aisle, my heart full of doubt. I could see the guests watching me, some smiling, others whispering, their eyes all focused on the bride in front of them. I forced a smile, trying to appear confident, trying to convince myself that this was what I wanted, what I had always dreamed of. But deep down, a part of me knew it wasn't true. It wasn't that I didn't love Tom, I did. But I wasn't sure I was ready for this kind of commitment. I wasn't sure that this was the life I wanted to step into. With each step, I could feel the pressure mounting. The doubts grew louder in my mind, drowning out everything else. What if this isn't the right choice? What if I'm making a mistake? What if I'm doing this because I'm scared of disappointing everyone around me? And yet, I kept walking, my steps unwavering, even though my heart was screaming at me to stop, to turn around. But it was too late. The moment was here. I was standing in front of him. I reached the altar, my hands trembling as Tom took my hands in his. His smile was warm, genuine, but it felt so distant. It felt like I was staring at a stranger, even though I had spent years with him. He looked at me as if I were the one who held the key to his happiness. And in that moment, I realized that he was looking for something from me that I wasn't sure I could give him. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice soft, filled with hope. "You look beautiful. I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with you." His words were the same ones I had always longed to hear, but now, they didn't feel like they fit. I looked into his eyes, searching for the connection we once had, but I didn't find it. I found a man who was waiting for me to affirm everything he believed to be true, and I couldn't do it. "I'm not ready," I thought. "I don't know if I ever will be." As the officiant began speaking, I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. My breath caught in my throat as I listened to the words being spoken, the promises being made, and I realized that I wasn't prepared to make those promises. Not today. Not in this way. I stole a quick glance at the guests, at the people who had gathered here to watch us begin our life together. They all had such faith in us, in this marriage, in the love that Tom and I shared. But all I could feel was the burden of expectation. I could hear their voices in my head, their hopes for us, and I realized how much I was carrying on my shoulders. But was it my own desire, my own need to marry him, or was it because everyone else thought this was the right thing to do? The officiant asked if anyone had any objections, and for a split second, I thought about how easy it would be to keep silent, to let everything continue as planned. But in that moment, everything inside me screamed for honesty. I couldn't go through with this. Not when I wasn't sure. Not when I felt like I was walking into something I wasn't ready for. No, I thought, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't let this happen. I couldn't marry him when I knew deep down that I wasn't sure about the future we were about to build together. I looked at Tom, and for the first time, I saw his smile falter. His eyes searched mine, confusion and hurt creeping into his expression. He had no idea what I was about to do. But I did. I turned toward the officiant and spoke, my voice shaking. I can't do this," I whispered. The room went silent. The silence that followed my words felt like a living, breathing thing, suffocating everything around me. The air in the room grew heavy, and I felt like I was drowning in it. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, racing in time with the uncertainty that gripped me. I had said the words I never thought I would say, but now I had to live with the consequences. Tom stood there, frozen. His face was pale, his expression a mixture of disbelief and hurt. His hands were still holding mine, but his grip had loosened as if the weight of the moment had caused him to retreat into himself. I could see his lips moving, but no sound came out. He looked at me as if waiting for an explanation, as if waiting for the moment to rewind so that he could understand how this had all gone wrong. The guests were still, the room deathly quiet. I could feel the collective gaze of everyone in the room, their eyes all trained on me, their judgment palpable. I could see my mother's face, her eyes wide with shock, her mouth slightly open as if she were about to speak, but no words came. I could feel her disappointment seeping through the cracks, her silent question, "Why now? Why like this?" I wanted to explain, to tell them all that it wasn't that I didn't love Tom, because I did. But love wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to marry someone when the doubt was gnawing at your insides, when the thought of spending forever with them didn't fill you with excitement but with a quiet, uneasy feeling. I can't marry you, Tom, I said again, my voice barely above a whisper. The words tasted like acid in my mouth. I could feel the weight of the choice pressing down on me, but at the same time, I felt something else, something that resembled relief. Tom's eyes filled with confusion. What do you mean? We've been planning this for months. Everyone's here, his voice faltered, the realization beginning to settle in. The pain in his eyes was unbearable to watch, but I couldn't look away. This wasn't something I could undo, but I knew deep down that I had to do it. I'm sorry, Tom, I said, my voice breaking. I'm just not sure. I don't feel ready for this. And I don't want to marry you if I'm not sure. You deserve someone who is absolutely certain about you, and I'm not. I could see his face crumple as the weight of my words hit him. For a moment, he didn't say anything. The room felt impossibly quiet, the noise of the world outside muted by the rawness of this moment. Then, slowly, he let go of my hands, stepping back as if the space between us was growing wider by the second. His face hardened, his jaw set, and I could see the hurt in his eyes giving way to anger. Is this some kind of joke? He asked, his voice low but sharp. Are you serious? After all this, you're telling me this now? Here? In front of everyone? I'm not joking, Tom, I said, shaking my head. I'm sorry. I thought I could go through with it. I wanted to, I really did. But I can't marry you like this. Not when I don't feel right. The anger in his eyes was replaced with something else, something deeper, a sorrow so raw that I couldn't bear it. He turned away from me, running a hand through his hair in frustration. I don't know what to say to you right now, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I thought you were the one. I thought we were making the right choice. But now, his voice trailed off. I felt a pang in my chest at his words, a deep ache that I couldn't ignore. I had loved him once, still loved him, in a way, but not the way I needed to. Not the way I knew marriage required. The love I felt for him was not enough to silence the doubts, the fear, the uncertainty. I don't know what to say either, Tom, I whispered. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to be here, in this moment. But I had to be honest with myself. And with you. He looked at me one last time, his expression cold. I don't know who you are anymore, he said, his voice shaking. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out of the room, the sound of his footsteps echoing through the silence. I stood there, frozen, feeling the weight of the world fall on my shoulders. I had made the right decision, but in that moment, it didn't feel like it. It felt like I had broken something that could never be repaired. I had taken a step away from the life I thought I was supposed to live, but now, I was standing alone, unsure of what came next. The guests slowly began to rise, whispering to each other in shock. Some looked disappointed, others concerned. But I couldn't focus on them. I couldn't focus on anything except the overwhelming sense of emptiness that filled me. Are you okay? Jessica asked, walking toward me, her voice soft. She had been by my side through it all, and now, more than ever, I felt like I needed her. I don't know, I whispered, my voice trembling. I just needed to be honest. But I don't know what comes next. Do you want me to stay? She asked gently. I nodded. Please. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I could barely focus on the people around me or the well-wishing that continued despite everything. I was lost in my own thoughts, replaying the moments before and after I said those words, I can't marry you. But deep down, I knew I had made the right choice. It didn't feel right, and I wasn't ready to step into a life that wasn't truly mine. I had chosen myself, and though it hurt, I knew it was the only way forward. I didn't have all the answers yet. But I knew I would find my way.
Wow. This story hit me hard. It's such a raw and emotional exploration of doubt, fear, and the pressure of expectations. I felt every bit of Sarah's inner conflict, the weight of making the right choice versus the reality of what she was actually feeling. I could really relate to how she felt trapped by everyone else's expectations, especially when it comes to such a big life decision. The pressure to marry because it's what you're supposed to do, or because everyone else is expecting it, is so real. And I think it's powerful that, even though she loved Tom, she realized she had to choose herself in the end. What really hit me was the moment when she said, "I can't marry you." I think we've all felt a moment like that in our lives, when we realize that we're not on the right path, no matter how much it hurts. That's such a brave and painful thing to do, especially in front of everyone. Tom's reaction, the disappointment, the anger, it all felt so real. It's a heartbreaking moment, but it's also empowering to see Sarah stand up for her truth, even though it's the hardest thing she's ever done. And the aftermath, with her standing there, alone in the room, reflecting on her choice, gosh, it really made me think about how difficult it is to make decisions for yourself, even when everyone around you is cheering for something else. I can't help but admire Sarah for finding the courage to walk away from something that wasn't right for her, even if she's not sure what comes next. This is such a bittersweet, yet powerful story about realizing that sometimes, the hardest choices are the ones we have to make for our own happiness. And though it's not easy, Sarah's journey shows how important it is to stay true to yourself, no matter how painful the consequences might be.